On Christmas Eve, the nearly 3-meter-tall oak doors of the Montgomery estate burst open. My mother Josephine didn't say a single word. She simply shoved my only suitcase hard, sending it crashing onto the frost-damp stone steps. Wind from the Savannah marsh lashed my face like needles. Behind her, my sister Vivian stood with her arms crossed, lips curling as if she were enjoying a private show. "Let's see how long you survive when you're no longer clinging to this house." Her voice cut through the night like a thin, cold blade. I dragged the battered suitcase along Magnolia Row, swallowed by humidity and the smell of wet earth. No money, no car, no place left to return to. Only the one thick coat on my back kept me from freezing. I collapsed onto an iron bench in the park beside Forsyth Park's church. My teeth chattered so hard it hurt. That was when an elderly barefoot woman stepped out of the darkness, her skin bluish-purple, shoulders trembling with every breath. Silver hair whipped wild by the wind. She looked like the cold had already seeped into her bones. Without thinking, I stood up, slipped my coat off, and draped it over her shoulders. Her hand brushed mine so cold it made my chest tighten. She whispered, "Kindness, when you have nothing left, is rare, my child." Then she turned away and disappeared into the fog. 1 hour later, the low growl of engines tore through the silence. A long line of gleaming black SUVs slid into the park, headlights sweeping across the ancient oak trees. The door of the middle vehicle opened. The same old woman who had vanished earlier stepped out, but now she wore a cream-colored silk coat, her presence commanding enough to steal the air from the night. She looked at me soaked, shaking, lost, and said, "I have waited long enough to know who you truly are." Before I tell you what happened after the moment she stepped down from that SUV, let me ask you just one thing. Which city are you watching this story from? And what time is it right now? If you have ever been pushed out by your own family into the coldest doorway of your life, share it in the comments below. I read every single one, and I know exactly how much that kind of pain hurts. Now then, let me take you back to that night. I thought I would drift into sleep right there on the iron bench, until the first engine sound cut through the fog. I curled up on the iron bench beside the Forsyth Park church, the cold piercing through the thin layer of clothing I still had on. The only coat I owned had been placed over the old woman's shoulders earlier, an instinctive act at the time. But now, it felt like I had traded away the very last warmth keeping me alive. Winter in Savannah spares no one. Wind from the marsh whipped across my face, the smell of damp earth and rotting moss seeping into every breath. The streetlights flickered, then went out completely, leaving the park drowned in a thick, suffocating darkness. I pulled my suitcase tight against my body, trying to preserve what little heat remained, but my teeth still chattered uncontrollably. No one passed by. Not a single voice. Just me, an iron bench, cold as ice, and a question slicing through my thoughts. Did I just give away the only thing keeping me alive? I hugged my knees, closed my eyes for a moment, just a moment, and then the ground began to tremble slightly. At first, I thought it was traffic passing on a distant road, but the sound grew closer, low, steady, synchronized more like an escort than ordinary cars. The fog was torn apart. White beams of light swept straight through the ancient oak trees. A convoy of gleaming black SUVs rolled into the park, their tires gliding over the wet ground and leaving shimmering trails behind. The scene looked like something out of a film, but it was so cold and real that I sprang to my feet. The vehicle in the middle stopped directly in front of me. Its headlights shone straight ahead, leaving me illuminated in the pitch-dark park as if I had been thrust onto an uninvited stage. The door opened. A figure stepped out, upright posture, measured steps, silver hair neatly tied back and reflecting the lights. I held my breath. It was the old woman, but not the fragile, trembling figure from earlier. She wore a cream-colored silk coat, soft leather shoes, and a stone bracelet on her wrist, as though she had just walked out of a gala. She approached with steady steps, her eyes no longer weary but sharp and alert. I didn't dare blink, afraid the scene would vanish like a hallucination. Eliza Montgomery. She called my name clearly, as if she had known it for a long time. The wind stopped. The entire park seemed to freeze. I have waited long enough to know who you are. Get in the car. Tonight is not over yet. I stood frozen in the mist, unsure which was more terrifying, the sight of the old woman transformed into a powerful lady, or the fact that she knew my name when I had never met her before. My heart pounded. Everything inside me cold, hunger, confusion collapsed into a single certainty: I had to get into that car. I did not know it yet, but my life had already cracked apart earlier that same day, inside a small office in Atlanta, and everything began from there. That morning, I had no idea my life was about to fracture because of a single email. Mornings at the advertising office in Midtown Atlanta always smelled of burnt coffee and echoed with the relentless clatter of keyboards. I arrived early, as usual, hoping to finish my work before driving back to Savannah for the Christmas party. But when I opened my laptop, a small icon appeared. Notice of organizational restructure. I clicked it. Just one short paragraph, cold, impersonal, with no words of thanks. We regret to inform you, your position has been eliminated effective immediately. My hands froze on the keyboard. I read it again, then a second time, then a third. The sounds of the office seemed to vanish, leaving only the heavy pounding of my heart in my chest. Beside me, my coworker Avery glanced over and clicked her tongue. Oh, another one. Good luck. Eliza. Her tone was as light as if she were commenting on the weather. I stood up and packed my belongings into a cardboard box. After 4 years of dedication, everything I owned there amounted to a small potted mint plant and a few folders. As I walked out the door, my team lead tossed out a single sentence. Hopefully next time you'll choose a more stable company. No one asked if I was okay. No one cared where I would go. In the parking lot, the Atlanta sky hung low and heavy. Drizzle slid down the windshield of my old Honda Civic. I placed the box on the passenger seat and sat still, listening to the rain tap against the roof. My phone vibrated. A message from my mother. Be home on time for the party. Don't embarrass us. She didn't ask where I was. She didn't ask if I had just lost my job. Just don't make us look bad. I fastened my seatbelt. On the drive along I-75 back to Savannah, I didn't know it yet, but this was only the first crack in that fateful day. The moment I stepped into the Montgomery estate, I knew the real pain hadn't even begun. I arrived in Savannah as the late afternoon light brushed the ancient oak trees lining the entrance to the Montgomery mansion. The entire house glowed with warm lights. Christmas music floated through the air, and luxury cars filled the driveway like a perfect winter gala, except for the sharp chill crawling up my spine. Inside the grand foyer, I stood there for a few seconds, waiting for someone to turn around. No one did. My mother, Josephine, was fastening a pearl necklace in front of a large mirror. She looked at me only through the reflection, her gaze detached, as if assessing an unnecessary detail in the evening's decor. Your hair is a mess, she said. Stand behind the guests. Don't draw attention. I tried to speak. Mom. But she had already turned away, not waiting to hear a word. Vivian descended the staircase, her red dress brushing the marble floor, her smile sharp as a blade. Oh, you're back already, she said lightly. You look exhausted. Or did you clumsily lose your job again? Her laughter rippled outward, touching a few guests sipping their wine. They didn't look at me with cruelty, Which was worse, they looked at me with pity. Then Graham Calder, my ex-boyfriend, now Vivian's fiancé, approached. Eliza, he said, his politeness chilling. I hope you find a new path. Life moves fast. Before I could even breathe, my father appeared, a wine glass in hand. He gave a small nod, as if handling routine business. Eliza, we've transferred all assets to Vivian. You're 30 years old now. It's time you took care of your own life. No words of comfort, no questions, not even a real look in my direction. I stood there, right in the center of the house where I had grown up, yet I felt as if I were slowly fading out of my own family. Sometimes, pain only truly echoes when you are alone. Inside a room no one knows exists. Room 12 at the Magnolia Highway Motel smelled like a blend of bleach, stale cigarettes, and dampness rising from a carpet long past decay. The neon light in the hallway flickered in slow pulses, bleeding through the thin curtains and casting a sickly blue glow onto the ceiling, making the room feel as if it were breathing tired and strained. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands still aching from the cold. Vivian's laughter kept replaying in my head like the sound of shattering glass. My mother's voice. You never truly fit into this family cut into my heart all over again. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to soothe the burning behind my eyes, from childhood until now. I had always believed that if I tried harder, endured a little more, pushed myself just a bit further, they would finally see me. But tonight, in this damp, forgotten room, the truth was as clear as the water stains creeping down the wall. It wasn't that I wasn't good enough. I simply wasn't chosen. The wind whistled through the crack beneath the door, making the curtains tremble softly. I closed my eyes, forcing myself to swallow the sharp, salty bitterness rising in my throat. And then suddenly, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number, no contact name, no message beforehand. My heart skipped a beat. I lifted the phone to my ear. Hello? A woman's voice answered low, precise, and calm. Are you Eliza Montgomery? I hesitated. Yes. Mrs. Eleanor Beaufort wishes to see you. A car is waiting outside. I sprang to my feet. Excuse me. Who? The call ended. No dial tone, no lingering breath. I pulled the curtain aside. Outside, Savannah's thick fog was being sliced apart by stark white headlights. 3 black SUVs were parked neatly in front of my room. Their headlights reflected off puddles on the ground, the lights spreading like blades across the pavement. A man in a black suit stood beside the middle vehicle, his hand resting on the door handle, as if he were waiting for the exact moment I would appear. No one had ever come looking for me like this. No one had ever waited for me. I threw on my coat, gathered every remaining shred of courage in my exhausted body, and opened the door, stepping into the cold fog. The rear door of the SUV opened, and she was there. The interior of the vehicle was so warm it nearly made me cry. Soft golden lights illuminated the contours of dark ebony wood. A faint trace of sandalwood filled the cabin, making me feel as though I had stepped into a world that did not belong to me. Eleanor Beaufort sat upright, her silver hair neatly pinned back, her pale blue eyes sharp enough that I felt completely seen. There was no trace of the frail, shivering old woman from the park. You look surprised, she said gently, yet with undeniable authority. I nodded, my lips so dry I could barely speak. I am not looking for someone perfect. Eliza, she continued, I am looking for someone who knows how to give, even when they have nothing left to hold on to. My heart stalled. I did not know what she had seen or how long she had been watching me, but there was something in her voice, something that sounded like she had once carried the very same pain I was holding now. Eleanor picked up the tablet resting beside her. The screen lit up, displaying a detailed file about me. Things I had never known anyone possessed. Eliza, you were never abandoned, she said quietly. You were simply standing in the wrong place to be seen. I once thought I had been rescued, but on my very first morning at the Beaufort estate, I understood. I had just stepped into the harshest trial of my life. The Beaufort estate appeared like another world, wrought iron gates wrapped in creeping vines. A long avenue of ancient oak trees leading to a white brick Southern-style mansion. A still lake reflecting the gray morning sky. The moment I stepped inside, I saw a prepared schedule laid out on a long ebony table in the entrance hall. 6 a.m. Run around the lake. 7 a.m. Breakfast and report review. 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Foundation meetings and project evaluations. 7 p.m. Document review. Standing beside the schedule was a tall woman with closely cropped silver hair and razor-sharp eyes. Margaret Holt, Eleanor's closest advisor. "You're 3 minutes late," she said, glancing at her watch. "I thought the run started at 6, I replied. "That's correct," she said, "but responsible people arrive earlier." I fell silent. The morning run took me around the estate's wide lake. Cold air rose off the water, burning my throat with every breath. Margaret ran beside me, her breathing steady, precise like a metronome. "You can't work for the Beaufort Foundation if you don't know how to endure," she said. "And if you don't know how to observe?" By the time we returned to the main hall, my legs nearly gave out. But before I could sit, Margaret placed a stack of files nearly 1 inch thick in front of me. "Read. We meet Eleanor in 2 hours." I swallowed hard and opened the first page. I knew I had entered a different chapter, a chapter that did not allow weakness. The first meeting took place in a dark wood boardroom, where light filtered through tall windows and cast a calm yet commanding presence across Eleanor's face. I sat beside her, taking notes, my ears strained to catch every detail. A project supporting underprivileged children was proposed for cuts due to being inefficient in terms of metrics. Eleanor asked Margaret for her opinion. Margaret replied flatly, "Insufficient return on investment." Then Eleanor turned to me. "Eliza, what do you think?" My heart pounded. I looked down at the reports. The numbers were indeed bad. But in the notes section, a field worker had written, "The children come here because it's the only place they can do homework when their homes have no electricity." I took a deep breath. I think effectiveness isn't only reflected in spreadsheets. Some things can't be measured by key performance indicators. The room went silent. Margaret raised an eyebrow. Eleanor studied me for a long moment, a gaze that felt as if it reached straight into my bones. Then she nodded once. "Make a note of it. We'll review this project again." I didn't fully understand what had just happened. I only knew my chest felt a little lighter for the first time in days. I didn't feel invisible. That night, the Beaufort estate sank into the distinctive stillness of the south, insects chirring beneath the oak canopies, a light breeze carrying the scent of damp earth from the lake into the long corridors. I sat at an antique wooden desk in the library, my eyes burning from reading reports for 3 hours straight. Numbers danced before my eyes. My hands trembled slightly from exhaustion and from the fear that I might not be good enough. The door opened softly. Eleanor Beaufort stepped inside, the warm golden light from the hallway behind her outlining her silver hair like a halo. "You're still here," she said, her voice gentle yet carrying the weight of someone who had lived through many storms. I set my pen down. "I just don't want to make mistakes." Eleanor looked at me for a long time, not with judgment, not with comparison, not with the cold detachment Josephine had used on me my entire life, but with the gaze of someone who could see a better version of me, one I had never truly believed existed. This exhaustion, she said, is a sign that you are growing beyond the shadow of others. My throat tightened. Eleanor opened a drawer and took out a small silver key, placing it on the table. Keep this. When the time comes, you'll know what it opens. I touched it cold, heavy, real. When I looked up again, Eleanor was already standing at the door. Tomorrow, Eliza, we begin the hardest part. The silver key weighed only a few grams, but what it opened changed my entire life. The west wing corridor of the Beaufort estate was so cold late at night that my breath turned to mist. The silver key rested in my palm, wall lights reflecting off it in a trembling streak of brightness. I slid it into the lock. Click. The door opened, and the scent of old oak wood mixed with Eleanor's signature lavender made my skin prickle. The room was small, silent, as if it had been sealed for many years. Along 3 walls stood dust-covered shelves of files, each labeled in a slender, slanted hand. 1998, Field Notes. 2003, Emergency Cases. 2007, Personal Records. I stepped toward the mahogany desk at the center of the room. A photo album lay open, as if it had been waiting for me. The first page, Eleanor in her youth standing alone in front of a house locked with chains. Her face was rigid, while the man behind her turned away, as if afraid to look at his own daughter. The next page is a series of yellowed newspaper clippings. Beaufort family. Daughter cut off by her own blood. Sole heir leaves home in the middle of the night. My chest tightened, so the pain I carried was only a later version of the pain she had once endured. A drawer beside the desk was slightly ajar. I knelt and pulled it open. Inside was only one thick envelope, labeled, "For the one who finds her way back." I reached to open it when a soft knock sounded behind me. I turned around, my heart clenching for a beat. Eleanor Beaufort stood in the doorway. No anger, no reproach, only the look of someone who knew exactly what I would find. "The fact that you opened this room means you are ready," she said, stepping inside, her low heels making soft taps against the aged wooden floor. She placed her hand on the open photo album. "They called me a traitor to the family," she began, her voice steady, though a deep tremor ran beneath it. "I refused the marriage the Beauforts arranged. I wanted to build a foundation. They wanted me married and silent." She turned to another photograph, a younger Eleanor, eyes both proud and desperate, dragging a suitcase through a rain-soaked night. That night, I was thrown out with exactly 3 things: an old coat, a little cash, and the Beaufort name I was no longer allowed to use. She smiled faintly, not bitter anymore, only carrying the quiet acceptance of someone who had survived. I slept at a bus station for 3 nights, worked as a server for 9 months, built the foundation one small donation at a time. No one believed in me. Then she looked straight at me. "Until I proved myself." She closed the album, gently but firmly. "And that is why I saw you, Eliza, in your fear, in the way you remained kind, even after being pushed out into the cold." She placed a warm hand on my shoulder. "But you need to understand the hardest part has not arrived yet." The next morning, Savannah's sky was a solid gray, as if warning that the day ahead would not be easy. Margaret Holt summoned me to a small meeting room behind the library, a space reserved only for critical evaluations. 2 folders lay side by side on the table. "A hypothetical scenario," she said, though her sharp gaze told me it was anything but hypothetical. "One project brings high profits to the foundation if community support is cut. The other generates no profit, but saves dozens of families." She slid both folders toward me. "Which one do you choose?" I opened the first folder. Numbers that looked like a dream: high returns, low risk. The second folder stories of workers whose electricity was cut every summer, children doing homework by flashlight. My throat went dry. One easy choice. One right choice. You have 3 minutes, Margaret said, folding her arms. I heard the clock ticking, each beat pressing against my chest. Then I pushed the profit-driven folder aside. I choose this one, I said, placing my hand on the community project. Profit is never an excuse to abandon the vulnerable. Margaret showed no reaction. But from the corner of the room, Eleanor appeared silent, watching me for a long moment. In her gaze, I understood she was not testing my intelligence, she was testing my humanity. That afternoon, Savannah sunlight poured into the room, bathing everything in an unexpectedly warm golden hue. Eleanor sat in an armchair by the window. On the table before her lay a thick document bound in deep blue leather. Come here, Eliza. I stepped closer, my heart pounding as if pulled from the inside. She turned the folder toward me. On the first page, printed words I had never dared to dream of: Barefoot Foundation. Transition of leadership. I looked up. Eleanor smiled, not with pride, not with authority, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had finally found her answer after years of waiting. I do not choose the perfect, she said. I choose those who have known pain and still choose kindness. Her hand rested lightly on mine, warm, steady. You will continue what I began, but in your own way. I opened the document, my hands trembling so badly I could hear the paper rustle. In that moment, I knew my life had turned onto a path with no return. Eleanor looked at me one last time, her gaze deep, as if she could see something I could not yet see. Prepare yourself, Eliza, because your family is about to knock on this estate's door. I was once thrown out of my home in silence, but this time, they stood in front of me, in the middle of a room full of strangers. Morning at the Barefoot Foundation began like any other day, the sound of leather shoes against marble floors, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee, low conversations echoing through the grand lobby. I was reviewing the meeting schedule when the receptionist hurried toward me, her face drained of color. Your family is downstairs, she whispered, her eyes flicking toward the elevator. The door slid open. 3 people stepped out. My father led the way, his back stiff but his eyes unsteady. My mother followed, gripping the strap of her handbag as if she needed something, anything to hold on to. And Vivian, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, stopped in the center of the lobby, as if stepping onto a familiar stage. The conversations around us faded, eyes turned toward them, then shifted to me. Vivian smiled first. This place really is something else, she said loudly, enough for the entire lobby to hear. Who would have thought you'd end up working here? Not a request to meet, not a request for permission, but a deliberate intrusion. I didn't step forward, I didn't step back. I simply stood still and let them expose themselves in a room that no longer belonged to family. We need to talk, my father said, his voice low but familiar, the same tone he had always used to give orders. Not ask questions. Vivian jumped in immediately, not waiting for my response. You're not answering your phone. Mom's been worried. She turned to the people around us, lowering her voice just enough to sound intimate, yet still carry. Our family always has to take care of her. I noticed a few exchanged glances, a few furrowed brows. Curiosity began to spark. My mother let out a soft sigh. You shouldn't make things this uncomfortable, she said. After all, blood is still blood. Blood. The words dropped into the lobby like a cold coin. I looked at them one by one, not angry, not trembling, just a very clear distance, one they hadn't yet realized they had lost long ago. I spoke, my voice low enough not to cause a scene, but firm enough that no one missed it. This is my workplace. No further explanation. No justification. And it was the silence that followed those words that made them hesitate. I stepped aside, clearing space in the middle of the lobby not to avoid them, but to open a wide enough gap for every eye in the room. "We can talk in the guest lounge," my mother suggested, her voice dropping. A belated offer. I shook my head. "That won't be necessary." I turned and looked straight at my father. "You're standing in the middle of my workday." A few quiet coughs sounded somewhere. Staff slowed their steps. Strangers lingered not out of curiosity, but because they sensed something shifting. Vivian forced a smile. "You're acting like we're strangers," I replied evenly. "No, I'm simply stating everyone's position. Today." I turned to the receptionist. "Please ask security to assist." No anger, no raised voice, just procedure. And that was what made Vivian falter. She had never faced me in a space where the rules were not set by family. The sound of heels echoed from the inner corridor, slow, decisive. Eleanor Beaufort appeared, draped in a cream silk coat, her gaze sweeping the lobby as if reviewing a report without paper. She stopped beside me. "What's going on?" she asked without looking at my family. Only at me. "Unscheduled visitors," I replied. Eleanor nodded once. "Then please have them escorted out." A short sentence. Yet no one doubted the authority behind it. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. My mother tightened her grip. Vivian looked around for the first time, unable to find a single ally in a room full of strangers. Security stepped forward. The elevator doors opened. My family was led away in silence, no shouting, no arguments. Only the eyes of witnesses followed them as they were escorted out of this place. When the elevator doors closed, Eleanor leaned closer and whispered in my ear, "This is only the opening note. The real aftershock is coming." I didn't need to say anything. When the truth is large enough, it speaks for itself. That afternoon, the Beaufort Foundation lobby was quieter than usual. No one spoke out loud, yet phones kept lighting up. Glances met, then quickly drifted away. News didn't need a loudspeaker, it traveled through brief notifications, through headlines not yet fully written. A local financial blog posted First Montgomery family escorted out of Beaufort Foundation headquarters. Then larger digital outlets followed. Their wording careful but sharp enough: family conflict, power dynamics, and workplace boundaries. I walked past the open office area. Computer screens scrolled rapidly. No one asked me a single question. There was no need. The truth was standing up on its own. Outside the glass walls, a few camera lenses appeared, then disappeared. There was no chaos, just distant photographs, 3 figures leaving in silence, shoulders drawn inward, footsteps hurried. The image didn't need a long caption. Upstairs. Eleanor closed the meeting room door. Margaret set a stack of reports down and said evenly, "The aftershocks have begun." I nodded. Not because I had won, but because things were unfolding in the correct order. That afternoon, the communications office phone rang non-stop. The same questions, phrased in different tones. Who is the family? Why were they escorted out? Was there a conflict of interest? No one answered on my behalf, and I didn't answer either. Outside, the story was retold using old fragments, photographs of lavish dinner parties, flashy social media posts, boastful remarks once applauded. This time, they were placed side by side and the lighting changed. An old acquaintance messaged me. "They called me. They want to explain." Another wrote, "A reporter asked about the family foundation from before." The panic wasn't loud. It revealed itself in rushed deletions, sudden tone changes, requests for private meetings. But there were no private rooms left open for them anymore. The door had closed. Not with a key, with transparency. At the end of the day, I stood alone by the window. The city reflected back calm, moving forward. There was no moment of triumph, only a very clear sense of lightness. Eleanor stopped by and set a cup of tea down. "You didn't say anything," she observed. "Because there was no need," I replied. She smiled. No praise, no further questions. I reread tomorrow's schedule. Project meetings, a field visit, concrete work, real people. That was where my voice existed. Out there. The story continued to spread. But in here, the rhythm of work remained unchanged. Silence, not avoidance. Silence was a choice. And for the first time, I understood justice doesn't need me to raise my voice. It needs me to stand in the right place. If you believe justice doesn't always need shouting, leave a. So I know you understand that. There are mornings when I realize that peace is not something we find, but something that remains when we stop trying to be accepted. That morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The lobby was still empty, early sunlight stretching across the cool stone floor. No phone vibrating, no new messages, no one waiting outside the door. Everything moved slowly, just enough for me to hear my own breathing. I brewed a cup of tea and stood by the glass wall, watching the city wake up. Cars rolled by. Pedestrians walked briskly. Life continued without needing me to explain anything, and without needing me to prove anything. For the first time in a very long while, I carried no sense of vigilance, not because everything had become perfect, but because I was no longer afraid of being pulled backward. I used to think home was the place where my name appeared on a household registry, a place where I had to keep trying in order to deserve staying. But those years taught me something different. Home is a place that does not ask me to shrink, a place where I am seen even when I am silent, a place where boundaries are respected, and kindness is not put on trial. Eleanor once told me, "You don't have to return to a door that hurt you." I understood that late, but once I did, it became very clear. Not every family is a home, and not every closed door is a loss. If you are listening to this story and see a part of yourself in it, I want you to know this. You are not weak for choosing peace. You are not selfish for setting boundaries. And you do not owe anyone your presence in a place that makes you smaller. Sometimes, the bravest thing is not winning, but leaving at the right time and building a place safe enough to stay. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so I can share more meaningful and valuable stories with you. See you in the next story.